As my heir, William now assumes the Scottish titles which have meant so much to me. He succeeds me as Duke of Cornwall and takes on the responsibilities for the Duchy of Cornwall, which I have undertaken for more than 5 decades.
We are bringing you to the most shocking updates about the British royal family and dive deep into stories that shake the very foundations of the monarchy. Today, we have news that will leave you absolutely stunned. At 76 years old, King Charles has made a confession so heartbreaking and explosive that it's sending shockwaves through every corner of Buckingham Palace, in what palace insiders are calling the most devastating admission in royal history. King Charles has finally broken his silence about a secret he's carried for decades. "I kept my son hidden for a reason." But wait, what son? We know about William and Harry, but sources close to the royal family are now revealing that there's another son, one who's been deliberately kept in the shadows all these years. This isn't just royal gossip or tabloid speculation. This is a confession that could destroy the Windsor dynasty as we know it. Palace insiders report that as King Charles faces mounting health concerns and realizes his time may be running short, he's finally ready to reveal the truth about a child whose very existence threatens everything the monarchy stands for. The question that's haunting royal circles tonight: who is this hidden son, and why has Charles kept him secret for so long? The confession that shattered royal silence. Here's what we know so far, and trust me, this story gets more shocking with every detail. According to our sources inside the palace, King Charles made this devastating confession during a private conversation with trusted advisors just weeks ago. The exact words, as reported by someone who was present in the room, were chilling. "I kept my son hidden for a reason, and now that reason may no longer matter." Think about what this means for a moment. King Charles, the man who spent his entire life upholding royal tradition and protecting the crown's reputation, is now admitting to hiding an entire human being, his own flesh and blood, from the world. This isn't about protecting privacy or maintaining dignity. This is about a secret so dangerous that it required a child to be erased from existence. But here's where it gets even more explosive. Our sources suggest that this hidden son isn't just any child born out of wedlock. If the timing is correct, this son could be older than Prince William himself. Do you understand the implications? We're potentially talking about someone who, under the old succession laws, would have had a stronger claim to the throne than the current heir apparent. The confession came during what palace insiders describe as an emotional breakdown. King Charles, reportedly overwhelmed by guilt and the weight of decades of secrecy, finally cracked under the pressure. Health scares have a way of making people confront their past, and it seems Charles can no longer carry this burden alone. Now let's talk about the reason Charles mentioned in his confession. Why would a future king hide his own child? The answer takes us back to one of the most turbulent periods in recent royal history, the 1980s. Picture this. Charles is trapped in a loveless marriage with Diana.
Prince Charles, new revelations about his marriage to Diana, what he was really like behind closed doors.
The whole world is watching their every move, and the pressure is unbearable. Behind the scenes, palace sources reveal that Charles found comfort in a relationship that nobody saw coming. This wasn't Camilla. We all know about that connection. This was someone completely different, someone who represented everything the royal family feared. The woman in question, according to our sources, wasn't from noble blood. She wasn't connected to aristocratic circles or political families. She was, in the words of one former palace insider, dangerously normal. And that's exactly why the relationship had to be buried. But here's the shocking part. She became pregnant. Can you imagine the panic that must have swept through Buckingham Palace? A future king having a child with a commoner outside of marriage while married to the people's princess? The scandal would have been astronomical. The decision to hide the child wasn't made overnight. According to sources, it involved the highest levels of the royal establishment. The Queen herself was reportedly involved in the discussions about how to handle this situation. The conclusion was brutal but clear. The child must disappear from public view entirely. Charles didn't just abandon his son, he erased him. The child was given a completely new identity, relocated far from Britain, and provided for financially through untraceable channels. In essence, they created a ghost, someone who existed, but officially never happened. The Great Cover-Up, how they made a prince disappear. What happened next reads like something out of a spy thriller, but according to multiple sources within royal circles, this is exactly how the monarchy handled what they saw as an existential threat. The operation to hide Charles's son was reportedly given a code name within palace circles: Operation Silent Crown. Every detail was planned with military precision. The child couldn't be born in Britain, too many witnesses, too much media scrutiny. Instead, arrangements were made for the birth to take place in a Commonwealth country, likely Australia or Canada, where royal influence could ensure absolute discretion. Hospital records were altered before they were even created. The birth certificate listed false parents, a fabricated address, and a completely invented family history. Medical staff were reportedly sworn to secrecy, with contracts so comprehensive that breaking them would have meant financial ruin and legal destruction. But the most heartbreaking part of this story is what it meant for Charles himself. Multiple sources describe him as being genuinely torn apart by the decision. This wasn't a casual affair or a momentary mistake. By all accounts, Charles had real feelings for this woman and wanted to be part of his son's life. However, the pressure from the royal establishment was overwhelming. The Queen made it clear that acknowledging this child would threaten the very foundations of the monarchy. Parliament would have been thrown into chaos, the line of succession would have been questioned, and the public's faith in the royal family would have been shattered. So Charles made the most painful decision of his life. He chose the crown over his child. The confession we're hearing about today suggests that this decision has haunted him for decades, and now, facing his own mortality, he's finally ready to confront the consequences of that choice. The implications of acknowledging a secret son extend far beyond personal embarrassment or family drama. Such a revelation would strike at the very heart of Britain's constitutional framework and challenge the fundamental principles upon which the monarchy rests. The line of succession represents more than tradition. It embodies the legal and constitutional foundation of the British state. Any disruption to this carefully maintained order could trigger a crisis not seen since the abdication of Edward VIII in 1936. Under historical succession laws, particularly the male primogeniture system that existed before 2013's reforms, a firstborn son would have held precedence over younger siblings, regardless of the circumstances of his birth. Even if legitimacy issues prevented actual succession, the mere existence of such a claimant would create unprecedented legal challenges. Constitutional scholars have debated similar scenarios in academic circles for years, but the practical implications would be staggering. Parliament might be forced to intervene, potentially creating a conflict between elected government and hereditary monarchy that could fundamentally alter Britain's political landscape. The Legitimacy Act of 1926 provides some framework for legitimizing children born outside marriage, but only if parents subsequently marry, a provision that clearly wouldn't apply in this situation. This legal gap would create uncertainty that could take years to resolve through the courts. Dr. Margaret Thornfield, a constitutional law expert at Oxford University, notes, "The monarchy's authority rests entirely on the perception of legitimacy and clear succession. Any ambiguity in this area doesn't just threaten individual reigns, it questions the entire system's validity. Family bonds strained by royal duty. While constitutional implications dominate headlines, the personal cost of such secrets cuts much deeper. The royal family, despite their public roles, remains bound by the same emotional connections that define all families, connections that would be severely tested by revelations of this magnitude. Prince William, as heir apparent, has structured his entire life around the assumption of eventual succession. His education, military service, charitable work, and even his choice of spouse have all been influenced by this destiny. The suggestion that someone else might have a prior claim would fundamentally challenge his sense of identity and purpose. For Prince Harry, already estranged from his family and vocal about feelings of being the spare, such revelations might provide context for long-standing grievances. His complaints about institutional coldness and lack of transparency would take on new meaning if viewed through the lens of a father capable of hiding an entire child from public knowledge. The ghost of Princess Diana looms large over any discussion of Charles's past relationships. Had she discovered such a secret during their marriage, it would have transformed her from a wronged wife into a victim of an even greater deception. The public's sympathy for Diana was already immense. Such knowledge might have made reconciliation impossible and turned public opinion irreversibly against Charles. Today's fractured royal relationships might make more sense when viewed through this lens. The persistent tensions, the carefully managed public appearances, and the obvious discomfort during family gatherings could all stem from unspoken knowledge that has created irreparable divisions. Perhaps the most tragic element of this story is the life that would have been lived in deliberate obscurity. If King Charles truly has a hidden son, that individual has spent decades existing on the margins of one of the world's most famous families. Growing up with royal blood, but no royal recognition, would create a unique form of psychological burden. The child would have had material comfort. The monarchy would never allow genuine hardship, but would have been denied the most basic human need: acknowledgement from a parent. Imagine the complexity of such an existence: attending school under a false name, celebrating birthdays without the one person whose presence would matter most, and watching from afar as half-brothers received the recognition and affection that remained forever out of reach. The resemblance factor would have been particularly challenging. Royal features are distinctive, and throughout his life, this individual might have fielded comments about his familiar appearance without being able to explain the connection that only he understood. As an adult, the burden would have intensified. Watching Charles's coronation,
and now King Charles's crowning moment, the first of two crowns to be placed upon his head.
William's future preparation for kingship, and the family's public celebrations would serve as constant reminders of a place at the table that could never be claimed. The psychological impact of such isolation cannot be understated. Mental health professionals who have studied similar cases of family rejection note that the effects often persist throughout life, creating patterns of relationship difficulty and persistent feelings of unworthiness. The monarchy's traditional methods of information control are increasingly ineffective in our hyper-connected world. Social media has democratized information sharing, while DNA testing has made biological relationships impossible to deny permanently. Unlike previous decades when royal correspondence maintained respectful distances and inconvenient stories could be buried through influence and intimidation, today's media landscape is unforgiving. Citizen journalists, genealogy enthusiasts, and investigative bloggers operate outside traditional channels of control. The case of Simon Durante Day in Australia demonstrates how persistent claims can maintain public attention despite official silence. His assertion that he is Charles and Camilla's son, born in the 1960s, has generated international coverage precisely because the palace refuses to engage with the allegations. Modern DNA technology means that any such claims could be definitively proven or disproven within days. The fact that no royal family member has ever submitted to such testing only fuels further speculation about what they might be trying to hide. Social media algorithms amplify conspiracy theories and alternative narratives, ensuring that stories the palace might prefer to ignore reach millions of people worldwide. The monarchy's traditional strategy of dignified silence increasingly appears evasive rather than noble. As King Charles enters what may be the final chapter of his life, the weight of decades-old decisions appears to be taking its toll. Palace sources suggest that his recent health challenges have prompted reflection on legacy and the secrets that have shaped his reign. The monarchy stands at a crossroads. Public opinion polling consistently shows declining support for the institution among younger generations, who expect transparency and accountability from all public figures. The old model of deference and unquestioning respect has given way to demands for openness and honesty. If these allegations prove true and evidence emerges, the royal family will face its greatest crisis in living memory. The revelation wouldn't just be about one hidden son, it would represent a fundamental breach of trust between the monarchy and the British people. The succession implications alone could require parliamentary intervention and potentially constitutional reform. Prince William's path to the throne, once seemingly inevitable, might face legal challenges that could take years to resolve. International ramifications would be equally significant. The British monarchy serves as head of state for numerous Commonwealth realms, and constitutional crisis in Britain would create uncertainty throughout these nations. The unspoken truth, what palace insiders really know. Deep within royal circles, conversations about this topic have reportedly intensified in recent months. Staff members who have served the family for decades are said to be increasingly uncomfortable with maintaining secrets that may soon become impossible to keep. Former palace employees, bound by non-disclosure agreements but approaching the end of their careers, are beginning to hint at stories they've never been able to tell. While none have spoken directly about hidden children, the pattern of coded language and careful omissions suggests that significant revelations may be forthcoming. The Queen's passing in 2022 removed one of the strongest voices for maintaining traditional secrecy. Elizabeth II's iron discipline in managing family scandals was legendary, but Charles lacks both her authority and her instinctive understanding of information control. Contemporary royal biographers note that Charles has always been more emotionally transparent than his mother, sometimes to his detriment. His tendency toward confession and explanation, rather than silence and dignity, may ultimately force acknowledgement of truths that previous generations successfully buried. Modern genetic testing has created an unprecedented challenge for institutions built on controlling information. Unlike forged documents or bought silence, DNA evidence is irrefutable and increasingly accessible to ordinary citizens. Commercial testing services have created massive databases that can identify biological relationships even when individuals haven't directly participated in testing. If Charles truly has a hidden son, that individual's genetic markers could potentially match with distant royal relatives who have submitted samples for genealogy research. This scientific reality has reportedly caused significant concern within royal legal circles. Traditional protective measures become meaningless when biological evidence can prove relationships definitively and independently. The royal family's continued refusal to participate in any form of genetic verification, even for clearly fraudulent claims, suggests an institutional fear of what such testing might reveal. In an age where DNA evidence regularly resolves decades-old mysteries, this resistance appears increasingly suspicious to public observers. When silence becomes impossible. The convergence of multiple factors, advancing age, health concerns, family fractures, and technological capabilities, may finally be forcing resolution of questions that have lingered for decades. King Charles's reported confession, however cryptic, represents the first acknowledgement from royal sources that these rumors have any foundation. Even qualified admissions mark a significant departure from the absolute denial that has characterized palace responses to similar allegations. The phrase, "hidden for a reason," implies deliberate concealment rather than coincidental absence. This choice of language suggests not just knowledge of the situation, but active participation in maintaining secrecy. As calls for transparency intensify and traditional methods of information control prove increasingly ineffective, the monarchy may soon face a choice between controlled revelation and uncontrolled exposure. Whatever the ultimate truth about these allegations, their very existence highlights fundamental questions about the monarchy's role in modern British society. Can an institution built on hereditary privilege survive in an age that demands accountability and transparency? King Charles has spent his entire life preparing for the crown, but his reign may be remembered not for his environmental advocacy or constitutional duties, but for the secrets he chose to keep and the timing of their revelation. The British people who have supported the monarchy through scandals, divorces, and constitutional crises may find that some betrayals of trust are too profound to forgive. The revelation of a hidden child wouldn't just be about one family's private matters. It would represent a fundamental deception practiced on an entire nation. As we watch this story unfold, we're witnessing more than royal gossip or constitutional theory. We're seeing the collision between old systems of power and new demands for truth, between institutional survival and personal responsibility, between the crown's duty to the state and a father's duty to his child. The next months may determine whether the House of Windsor can adapt to these new realities, or whether the weight of its secrets will finally prove too heavy for even the most enduring of institutions to bear. The palace walls have kept many secrets over the centuries, but in our interconnected world, even the strongest walls eventually develop cracks. And once the truth begins to emerge, no amount of tradition, protocol, or institutional authority can put it back into hiding. As King Charles faces his twilight years, the question isn't whether these secrets will remain buried. It's whether their revelation will mark the end of one chapter in royal history or the beginning of the monarchy's final act. What do you think about this explosive revelation? Could the British monarchy survive such a constitutional crisis? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more exclusive royal updates and untold stories from behind palace walls.